And we are live. Well, hello, Mark.
Hello, how's it going?
It's doing great. Happy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm psyched to be here.
Me too. Um, Mark, I always open the show with the same question. And this question is you don't have to answer this referring to work. This has nothing to do with work, it has to do with you. And the first question is always, who is Mark Cernosia? So give me, like, tell us who's the person behind the persona.
Ah, cool. Yeah, well, I'm Mark Cernosia. I am born and raised in Vermont. So a nice little nook of the US. I am a father, a husband, um, an avid outdoors person. I love snowboarding and mountain biking and just being outside. And then I also love just nerding out too. Um, so that, uh, is a kind of a quick little overview. I guess one thing I'm missing that is a big part is a music lover. I'm a big music fan. Love going to see music, listening to music, try to play music every now and then. But yeah, yeah, born and raised in Vermont, and just kind of, I feel like I try to really live the values of Vermont, and it's an interesting place in this world where just like try to be open minded for everything and welcoming, and yeah, just kind of keeping that perspective on things as much as possible, and especially in this day and age, it's harder than ever, but it's also um, yeah, it's harder than ever, but it's also nice just to be here and like be able to go into the woods and get away and all that, and not being kind of the rat race of a city or something like that. So yeah, I would say that that's a pretty solid solid background.
Well, don't worry. I will come back to it later by other
Yeah.
secret ways. Um, it's interesting that you mentioned like outdoors and open mindedness and stuff like that because there's always a topic per episode, and the topic of this episode is something that will ring a bell on you, which is disconnect to connect. It's
Yeah.
something you've also like said a lot at Camp Mograph,
Hmm.
and to me, like that just sentence that might look simple equates to even like almost like a form of living, like a lifestyle. And
Totally.
so I wanted like to open this like topic with you with you maybe going more in depth on what does for you disconnect to connect mean, or like what that's philosophy.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, to me, so well, to give you a quick little background on it, we came upon that saying at the first Camp Mograph, and it was also a saying that some of the camp leaders at the camp we rented had said to us, and they had it kind of like inscribed in a little sign. And I was like, I saw it, I really resonated with it. I was like, oh, that's amazing, especially we're always online, so like disconnecting is at this point of the world and time is almost like harder to do than connecting, in terms of like technology and things. And so I think it really resonated for me, at least, because it was a way for us that really know, like, and I'm gonna kind of put it in the place of Camp Mograph in the first year. Like, a lot of us knew each other from online and like Slack channels and whatever different forums. And so like you could show up to this event or any event and you kind of knew some people a little bit, but you know you never really had time to like hang out and chill. And so that's where, to me, where all the connection happens is when we as humans can gather and get together with other humans and just interact and chat and and be real, and try to um, yeah, kind of put yourself out there in ways where like do your best to like disconnect from pre-existing thoughts or disconnect from technology or whatever it is, and like have an open mind, meet new people. You never know what journey that might take you on, so the whole disconnect to connect was really spawned from that first camp, and it has kind of been a mantra that I've tried to, somewhat apply to my life. And it's really hard, it's really hard. But recently I've had to recalibrate and I've had to disconnect from things. So I could not only, I had to disconnect from certain things to connect with myself again, because I had spent so much time doing things for others, and I don't say that as like
Yeah, it's
I
not a
don't want
bad
that to
thing.
be taken the wrong way. Like that was like a love language of mine, like taking care of others and whatever. But I also found that through that I wasn't taking care of myself, and that self-care just kept getting kicked down the road, and there was always something else to do instead of take care of myself. And I found myself not snowboarding as much and barely mountain biking and doing all these things that filled my bucket and have filled my bucket since I was a young kid, to do all this other stuff that it did impact me and I enjoyed doing it, but I'm not quite sure if it was filling the bucket as much as I thought it was, you know. Or I guess how I should say it would be like it was filling a bucket, but maybe not um um with like as strong of a beer in that bucket. You know what I mean? It was more watered down. And so, yeah, just really trying to refocus on myself recently has really kind of put a new meaning to the disconnect to connect, and that was a bit of a personal journey that I've had to go on, but it does seem like through the many years we've been saying that and we talk to people about it and, really try to live it with the Camp Mograph stuff, like people fucking resonate with it. Like it means it means something to people when you are like, yeah, disconnect to connect. It's like, oh shit, so simple, but yet, yeah, of course, um, and yeah, I don't know. Now I'm just rambling.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna riff a little bit on that because
Yeah.
to me, you said a word that is important, and it's like refocus. And to me, that word is important because um, the world is nowadays filled with things that make you think they are a priority
Hmm.
for different reasons. Uh, be it because it's a side hustle, be it because it's a community, participation. Um, but in the end, like all those things end up like eating you alive.
Hmm.
And it's nonstop because, it's like if it's not one thing, it's going to be the other one. It's like if it's not this, it's going to be social media. If not social media, it's going to be work. And, and that's is endless.
Hmm.
There will be always something new to eat your time. And
100%.
I do think that like the only thing that we really own in this earth is the time we have on
Hmm.
it and what we do with it. And so like to me, like when you said refocus, it really resonated with the fact of like pressing the brake and just looking around and it's like, okay, where am I? What the fuck am I doing? Where do I
Hmm.
want to where do I want to go? And then like act accordingly,
Hmm.
and You've mentioned Camp Mograph in the conversation, and you are one of the founders of Camp Mograph.
Mhm.
Um, how has camp shaped you as a human being and also as a creative? I'm not talking about the job, I'm not talking about like being the organizer and renting the place. No, I'm just talking about
Mhm.
like through the years of camp and the interactions with people, how that has shaped you or like affected you, opened your mind. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think how it's kind of shaped me has been kind of illuminating different things for me. Like learn that like I really enjoy being a connector of people. And being that conduit. Um, really enjoy being a part of a community, and also just a, an open creative community, which was really important for us to set at camp. Was like had to be a really open place, and like there's a lot of um what's the right words, I guess there's a lot of like baggage that comes along with like shit from pre-COVID days. Like I mean, just a lot of like old white males dominating everything essentially, and from my experience going to a lot of events, I saw that. And like I really, with the camp thing, I really wanted to make it as safe of a place and open for anyone to show up. And if they were a sound designer, great. If they, I always looked at it as it was like a creative conference rooted in motion graphics, but everyone there would be able to get something out of it. But it was important to me that like we could have fucking hard conversations, because like what are we doing in this industry or whatever if we can't be real with each other and like fucking move the needle? Are we, again, we're just kicking the can down the road for someone else to do it? And so I think what camp also taught me was like there was a fucking need for a space like that or an event like this to really like flip all the events at that time on its head. And it was very different. But I also, talking about community and stuff, just the networks of people I met. Obviously us, we were able to meet through Monday meetings years ago, but also just actually in real life at camp. um but I mean, it just taught me that like um and I guess I've realized this more recently than ever, that I put I put a lot of myself into camp, and I loved doing that, and it made it kind of weird and unique and funky. But that's, I think, what made it really fucking cool. Like if everyone's chasing that like kind of medium standard or whatever, like everything's averaging at medium 50% gray, like what, like that just seems boring. So like let's just stand out and be weird and do weird things and have, I don't know, just really be a little bit more true to who I am and stuff. So what I've learned and how camp has shaped me through that was that like leaning more into who I fucking am and like the passions I have and the weird music festivals I get to go to, and then I get to see certain things and I'm like, oh shit, I want to do that at camp. And like just always pulling inspiration and being true to myself. It showed me that like, oh, that's actually successful. And it's successful because like I'm not trying to fucking front and be someone I'm not. It's like it's genuine, it's authentic, and that, I guess I can't say it myself. But you as a camper and an attendee at camp, like I hope that comes through, because like that kind of authentic fire and drive I had, you know, um, it just shows me that like if you really dive into who you are, that it's there's only one Augustine, there's only one Mark, you know, like, why are we trying to be like everyone else, you know? So really just trying to like know who you are, lean into that, lean into what you love, and build shit around that. Because then, you know, it's not like you're not working because you love it or whatever, but like it makes everything more manageable when you're just being true to yourself, you know, and who you are, and you're not trying to front as someone else.
Yeah, you know, like the complexity I think that comes with it is that we are shaped. I mean, we spend a lot of our time working,
Mm-hmm.
and our behaviors are shaped a lot by the work we do because we have clients and we have to be flexible and understanding and we have to find compromise and so I'm not saying we are in that 50% gray area, but we travel through it
Mm-hmm.
quite a lot, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to just round the edges and the corners and just like avoid friction and stuff like that. And and after having gone like multiple times at camp, what I noticed is that like, but not only at camp, like generally, is that like at first contact, people place themselves in that 50% gray area just to kind of like avoid uh, rubbing anybody on the on the wrong
Sure.
side.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, and this is my strong belief, is like not everybody is for everybody. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's made to go along, and that's fine. And so
Mm-hmm.
some people can be off-putting for you, but might be a match with somebody else, and they can like be like best friends. And
Mm-hmm.
and so I rather like came across somebody that might be like, to me, I don't connect, like I don't like that person for whatever reason it is, but I get to see who they are and what they do, and I can go like, what they do is incredible, like not my type of person, but like props, you know, I respect
Yep.
that shit. uh
Yep.
then going like, I don't know who you are, I don't know what you do, like like just like in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, people will either love you or hate you, but that's life, you know.
That's life, man. And I mean, you know, you've got skateboards hanging up in the background. Like, we both are of that ilk, right? And like, think about skaters. Like, everyone's got their favorite skater, whether it's like kind of the vibe they present, tricks that they do. Like, you know, there's some weird characters in skating, and it's fucking awesome. And like, people resonate with that. They see part of themselves in that. And like, you know, and so, I don't know. And maybe some of that is the kind of skate, snow, kind of surf mentality that I have from growing up in that culture. But it's kind of that, yeah, that DIY and like figuring out how you're either going to do a trick or how you're going to make something successful or how you're going to fucking sell a skateboard, you know, whatever it is. It's, I don't know. I feel like from that culture, you get that almost drive, that DIY kind of drive too, you know. Um,
Today was
yeah.
released an episode with Peter Clark.
Oh yeah, I saw
Amazing,
that. He's the man.
so amazing artist, but he also does like a lot of skateboarding, and
Mm-hmm.
he said something that like matches exactly what you're saying, and I think it was like beautifully uh said, like put. He said like, when you're skateboarding, like not only you get used to fail, but you get used to fail in front of the others. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing, but and you get up and you try again. But the beautiful thing is that like the people like looking at you, they're not judging your failure. They're appreciating the fact that you're trying.
Yeah,
And I found that
love
like
that.
incredible. I
Yep.
found that incredible. Um, and you know, like coming back to this notion of disconnect, to connect, you, and I think that's what you meant when you were talking about refocus. Like you recently stepped down from the Camp Mograph organization.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that when you announced that, I immediately in my head was like, he's disconnecting to connect. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and can you share a little bit more on that? If you have like very personal reasons, you don't have to. But I'm interested
Yeah.
more in the part of like you were saying, like working with the community was very fulfilling, but it wasn't fulfilling me in the way I was needing to be fulfilled in a way. So
Yeah. I mean, totally. And um, yeah. So I'll give a quick little backstory, and then we can focus more on like current times. But so like camp started back in 2019. Like it actually started in 2018 with the idea and all the stuff. But um, it started as a little personal side project. Sounded like a great, fun idea. I had this idea. I was at Half Res in Chicago and splitting an Airbnb with Matt and Dave from Mograph.com and Liam Klisham. And I think Ryan Summers was there. I think Barton Damer was there. Like a bunch of people were in town. So we were all just kind of hanging out. Anyway, I had this idea of like getting a bunch of, motion people together to go fishing, canoeing, camping, whatever. And everyone seemed to be really into that idea. They're like, we should make this an event. And it's like, okay, sure, I need help. I can't do it myself. And so everyone kind of rallied around it and like we started it. But it was all like a little side hustle, personal projects. It was a great excuse to get some people up here to Vermont where I am. There's no motion scene here at all. And so like the fact that we were able to get all these people to Vermont was pretty incredible. And people had a great time, even though the weather sucked. And then, the next year we went out to Oregon, and that actually was COVID year. So it delayed us a year. But through that, everyone didn't go to events. And then when we actually had our second event the year after COVID, we felt comfortable of doing it because it was outside primarily, and we took all the precautions and all that, and we do them at summer camps. So they had summer camps all summer with kids. So the camp knew how to keep everyone safe. And so we felt good about it. The thing sold out immediately, and that was kind of a blessing and a curse. We were just on, like the event just exploded, and we really were thankful. But like all of a sudden, it just went kind of gangbusters, and it was great, and I loved it. And we built this amazing community, and it's still there. And again, I've stepped away, but Dave and Julie are still carrying on, and uh where are they going with that? Okay, so started as a personal project. It grew really fast. We didn't have the right kind of business lanes in place, and because we're all friends, that's the thing. Like we're all friends that we're doing this, and like for a while we didn't even have an operating agreement. We didn't even have anything because we were all just like handshake. And so like as things started growing and whatever, like um, it just it was harder to like keep that passion project side of it alive because just the amount of time and effort needed to put into camp now, it had gotten so much bigger. Like it started at 75 people year one, and now this past year we were at 180. So there's just a lot more moving parts, and it was just becoming more and more of a time suck, right? And that was a time suck away from my studio that pays my bills. It was a time suck away from my family and from my wife and my kids. Um and so as much as I loved it and like it was amazing, I had to kind of refocus. And some of that was due and prompted by some of these kind of bad business things we had in place, and or no business stuff we had in place really. um and so yeah, I think this is actually quite fitting for the topic. I was trying to process all of this through the holidays, right? End of the year, the holidays, it's just a lot of stuff going on. And I was just like at my mental limit, and I didn't want to lose friends out of like our business if like things went sideways, and I didn't want to risk that. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, I feel like this day and age, we're just constantly bombarded with like inbound, that it makes it really hard for us to like actually fucking think. And so I was so lost, and I had no idea what I wanted to do, how I wanted to move forward, what was going on, what my next step was going to be. We just did a 5-year run. Last year we did 2 events with camp. We did one in Brisbane, Australia, and one in Chicago. And like, so one's enough. 2 on top of it on the other side of the world, like, dude, it was fucking nuts. But here's the thing. We had this community. People loved it. People really resonated it. They loved the whole camp experience and all that. And so through this process, I started feeling a little bit of responsibility now too, of like, I need to continue on for everyone who loves this thing. And so I have an appreciation for fucking musicians and, bands that are still doing their thing right now, because I can't imagine how that goes. But so I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had mentioned this to you too. Like, I wasn't snowboarding. I kept kicking that can down the road. And so like, it was early January. I hadn't been to the mountain yet. And I was like, what is going on? So I cleared my schedule. I went up to the mountain by myself, had a great day. My last run, I hiked off the backside of the mountain. There's some great tree runs back there. Sat there by myself for a while, just kind of looking at the mountains, and like this enormous like wave of peace came over me of like, you know what? That's totally good. Like, that camp thing was great. I'm going out on top. I had a great time doing it, but like, I'm going to close that chapter and let's open another one, like on to the next, and it was just funny. And I also ironic that like, for me to really process what the hell was happening, I had to go get away from all the noise. I had to go sit in nature by myself, quiet my mind, enjoy what I was seeing, and just let a lot of that distraction and noise just disappear so I can actually think. And so when I had that moment, I was like, all right, that's the right decision. And I woke up, I made that decision. I woke up the next morning and I was feeling light, excited, and just like ready for the day. And I was like, whoa, I have not felt like this in a while. So I was also realizing the amount of fucking stress I was carrying just because of that. And just because of the camp thing, that was my side thing. Like, I've got my real business that actually pays money and bills, And so, yeah, like I just didn't realize the stress I was carrying with it and the weight I was carrying with it. And like, I don't know, like, I was being like chippy with my kids, right? Through the holidays. I wasn't being a good husband. And I'm like, all for what? Right? Like, for what? For me to be like the fucking camp guy? Like, no. Like, number one job is being a dad and a husband, and then running my business and keeping a roof over my damn head. And, like, so the priority list was all shuffled in different ways. And like, that priority list was never well thought out, because everything always was a priority. So everything was always at the top. And how do you deal with that? Like, that just adds more stress and anxiety and all the shit. So yeah, man, it was like a long, hard kind of mental journey to get there. But like, I feel very at peace with the decision on like stepping away and letting it be its thing. And like, honestly, if I was able to bring kind of a gift of gathering back to people like through it, and whatever, bring my vibe to it for the years I was into it, amazing. That's what I was there for. I've seen some other things starting to pop up, like PJ's got Safe Space in LA now. Like Dash Bash is doing workshops this year, like a workshop day. And like I see all these other cool events too that are like doing more and like becoming more and being another resource for people in that area or whatever. And it's like amazing. Like if camp had any sort of influence or any sort of if it got someone excited to start a local meetup or whatever, like boom, job well done, pat on the back. That's all I would want from it, is like just kind of giving that gift of like gathering and being a true fucking human with people, because like it's just innately in us that we need to like be together. And when we're all behind screens and AI and all the technology and everything's, the world's ending, it's like, how do we find solace? It's like with each other,
Yeah. No, and like I think like one of the reasons I do the podcast is to show how whatever who you are, at which level you are, how hard things can be, and how like doubt is always present.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because you don't see that with the persona. When people saw you at camp or see other artists that have been guests online or in a conference, you look like you rule the world. Like you look like everything is evident and just like one plus one equals two, and everything is like this. When in fact, like behind that facade, like there's so much doubt and questioning and like even doing this podcast, like it's a lot of work. It's not as much work as camp, I imagine, but like it's still like work and I'm down like, should I keep going and stuff like that. And I think you mentioned also there's something that was really interesting, is that a lot of the weight we carry, we put that weight ourselves on us. Because
totally. Yeah.
Because once you like, for example, you took the decision, that looked like an evidence. And it didn't took you long, and then we have all these like preconceptions that like, oh, I'm going to fail people and people like will be mad at me and all this is going to be a letdown and all that sort of stuff. When in fact, not at all. And like, if somebody comes to you and says like, man, you've let me down, like, first of all, that person is an asshole, because they're not they're not like reading the room and like just seeing that as a human you needed that break. And secondly, you would go like, well, yeah, sorry. It's like,
totally.
What does it to say? It's like, and you had the mountain for that. Like, to me, it's the ocean. Like every time I go to the ocean, I grew up by the ocean. And every time I go to surf or even just like sit on the sand and just listen to the ocean and the waves crashing, like everything turns off, like everything tunes down. And I'm just there with myself in the end. And just having this kind of like one-on-one conversation with myself, where you can, like you said, like without noise going like this, like, again, it's like this. Okay, no. And it's not like maybe whatever. It's like, no, this, okay, I can, this, okay, I will keep on this and so on. And like you said, priorities. It's just like those get reshuffled constantly. Everything is urgent. Everything is demanding time, grabbing your time. Again, it's like I come back always to this notion of time. Something I've been doing also with like friends is, everybody knows the story where you go like, hey, we should have a drink. Yeah, let's call each other, whatever. Never happens. 2 years later, yeah, we should have a drink. And now what I'm doing now is like literally when somebody says that, it's like, okay, grab your agenda now, right now, let's put a date.
Yeah.
Let's take the time. Let's take the time to do it. Because if we don't, we will lose 2 more years. And that's like, that's time we like you said, you don't know what's going to happen when you will meet people or you will spend time together. So, but for everything, it's like family, friends, my kid. You know, you mentioned structure, even work
Hmm.
wise. Like, I've established with my wife, like, kind of like structuring rules for like work time and break times. So whatever like super mega urgent job I'm on, like with the delivery for tomorrow, I stop at this exact time to eat with the family, spend time together.
Hmm.
And then if I have to go back to work, I go back to work. But we had that like slot of
Totally.
time, of quality time to like no screens, no thing, just us eating, chatting at like human
Hmm.
connections.
Hmm.
Um, and it's cool that you mentioned like snowboarding on the mountain because that was one of my questions because I know you're into snowboarding. I love snowboarding myself. And snowboarding is a scene that not only like the outdoors, but also like from the design standpoint, is has a very specific vibe, and is very vibrant. And I wanted to know how that scene has influenced you as a creative,
Hmm.
but also as a human.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would say like snowboard, like everything, snowboarding, skateboarding, especially for like creative and graphics, right? Like, I mean, so many classic graphics through all of those decades, honestly. But I think at least for me, snowboarding probably reigns a little bit more close to home, just because growing up here in Vermont, the Burton factory was down the road. Like, um, really just got to see that brand from, I don't want to say the beginning, I wasn't around then, but like from like the early 90s up. And like I think it like again talking about the DIY culture and just kind of like when you go back to, you know, a lot of the I don't want to say like fuck the man or like, like right, like standing up against authority and kind of like all that, right? Like it I think through that and through the people you meet, you start finding more like cliche words, but your tribe, right? And you start finding like-minded people, and then, oh shit, you're into graffiti too? Like, cool, let's do graffiti as well. And oh, you do this, and you make beats? Let's make beats, like just kind of trying to be. I feel like the whole culture was really embracing of the art and the creativity side of everything too, from music to art to fashion to like everything. There's a lot of stuff kind of wrapped in this one sport or industry, if you will, and I'll say action sports in general too, because this definitely is bigger than snowboarding. But like, growing up watching skate videos, snowboard videos, like that, those are the soundtracks of my life. Though that's how I got exposed to so much music. And like and yeah, as a creative and after working at Burton for a long time too, there like I got to work alongside amazing people that I learned so much from. And you know, when I was at Burton, they were a little different at the time. They essentially had like an in-house agency studio. Like it was the creative department, and we did everything: website, print catalog, all the videos, like everything. And we had our whole briefing system. Like everything was like this little internal agency. And so like that was an amazing learning experience too. Just like seeing that whole process and how product cycles worked, and a lot of stuff like that I've now been able to really leverage for my work. But in terms of like how it has like inspired me, I think it's just more of like a open mind, free thinking mentality. Just like I said it before, like there's all sorts of walks of life that snowboard or skateboard or whatever, and like you can get along because you can both be trying the same trick or what, like there's that commonality, right? And it really helps break any sort of like mold or like barriers or anything between people, or and I would say music does the same. When you go to a show and you're standing next to some people and you don't know it, but the show's great, everyone's vibing, like, cool, like we could probably already be friends, but I think it just allowed me to like just be open to any and all things, because like everything seemed to be influencing that culture at one time, punk rock to rap to everything. And so like it was a interesting, almost like microculture of the bigger culture, but it was also ahead of its time because it was so youth driven. So a lot of the songs that would be on a skate video would get popular 3 years later, but they were able to get it because like Interpol wasn't fucking popular yet, or like, so it's just funny to how cycles happen like that. And I'm also starting to see that now, and you might see that now too, is like what's old is new, what's new is old. Like, I'm a big music fan with like Grateful Dead and the band Fish and everything, and like that's kind of come full circle. There's a whole new generation discovering the Grateful Dead right now, and like it's so funny to see how like the cycle always repeats, and I don't know, I love kind of just being part of that.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's funny, but because you mentioned like cliches, but like you said, all of that culture was and still is, but like in the 90s, 80s, 90s was very youth driven. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, we were all teenagers, like all young people trying to find our identity. And so
Mm-hmm.
we go through those cliches, those like like revolution thing, fist in the air, and you know
Yeah, yeah.
um and but what I find, like I always say this to my daughter, is don't lose that,
Mm-hmm.
because then we with time, like, of course, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, you start seeing the cycles, and you become an adult, and sometimes like I miss that energy, because there
Yeah.
there is something like completely raw in there, that is kind
Yeah.
of like has no limits,
Mm-hmm.
like I remember doing tricks, or even like taking waves, that now as an adult I would think that's suicidal.
Yeah.
Like, like if I do that now, I will probably die,
Yeah.
or like end up in a wheelchair. But at that time, you have like this like rage that like drives you,
Yeah.
and I feel that like even like like creatively speaking now, like as creative and artists, um people have been losing that rage,
Mm.
that thing that like whatever they throw at you, you go for it, and sure, you have a brief, but trying to go to that, like you said, that weird spot in yourself, like that weird area where
Mm-hmm.
like people might think like this guy is weird,
Mm-hmm.
but then at some point, like, but this is cool, like he's weird but he's making cool shit. So
So, it's so funny you say that, because like I literally had this conversation yesterday that like in
I was
action
behind the
sports is
couch,
a
you didn't saw
perfect.
me.
Yeah. No, this is it's so funny because it's like it's very true for action sports, especially right now. It's like thinking back to the early 90s, right? And like a bunch of the ads were like, geez, what are some famous ads? I mean, there's one I can think of, like a Burton ad of like, I think it's Jason Ford, like slashing this log with like a fucking cigarette hanging out of its mouth, and like, like edgy, right? For then, and
Yeah.
like stuff of just edgy stuff. And that's what made it so interesting and cool and drew me towards it. And it was like, oh, this kind of rebellious, or like, what is this thing? Right. same deal with like fish. When I first saw fish, I was like, what is this fucking culture? And there's a whole secret language. Like, what is happening here? You know? Um, but what I've noticed recently is that a lot of these brands that we grew up loving are trying to go as far into the middle as possible so they can sell at Target and Dick's and da 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 da. And I mean, you see it with like Quicksilver, Billabong, Volcom. Like, um, they're not edgy anymore. They're like mainstream. Okay, you know. And then you see all these little micro brands starting to emerge, and they're like kind of crushing it because they are doing something different and weird, and people want to, they're attracted to that, you know? And so, like, talking about everything that 50% gray, you know, like some of these brands, what gets you in the door is that cool, weird shit that you did. But then when they want to execute the vision and the marketing, you know, campaign, it's fucking safe and it's not going to ruffle anyone's feathers. It's going to be very vanilla. And it's like, yo, like what? And even when I was working at Burton, they were starting to sell product into like some bigger shops, and they started re-engineering some of the product to fill that shop's needs. So we were making more stuff to essentially like fill into big box stores. And in my head, I'm like, the reason why Dick's wants to carry a Burton or a Volcom or whatever, because they're edgy and they're cool. If we're going to make all stuff that's just black and white and very plain and vanilla, like that's not Burton. That's not Volcom. That's not like, what? That's not why they want you in there, you know?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I feel like it's similar, like as creatives too, is like you might do an amazing personal project or a cool little film or a short or whatever, and that gets you in the door and it really cracks things open. But what I've seen recently too is like everyone wants to just play it safe because no one wants to risk their neck or their job on anything. And like, it's a lot easier to go safe and it be okay rather than it being either a massive wild success or an epic failure. And like, from what I've started to see too, is like a lot of these meetings and clients that I talk, there's a lot of people in these meetings and like they need to justify their worth somehow, some way, you know? And so like, but no one's really willing to like stick their neck out because they don't want to be the one blamed when it didn't convert the ROI or whatever. But like for selling a product, what's the ROI? Right? Like, is it 1,000,000 likes or is it selling 1,000 units? You know, like, and so that gets into a whole other topic too of like data and
Yeah.
metrics and all this stuff. And it's like, but does a like sell your product? I mean, maybe a few of them do, but like, you know what I mean? It's like how we're so skewed on how we look at things now. And maybe the disconnect to connect is maybe a bit part of that. Maybe we are so disconnected that we're focused on other data points and this, that, and the other, that we're missing the elephant in the room, that people just want Volcom to be a cool fucking brand again. Or like, I don't know. And I know there's shareholders and that, but like, you know, Sean White's doing his new snow league right now. And I've been fortunate to work on it, do a bunch of graphics for it. But the people I know behind the scenes there are doing their best to shake up what a half pipe contest looks like now, because like everything's become so stale and so just formulaic that like it's not cool anymore. So like,
You know,
I don't know. It's
yeah, I mean, with like you said, it's a whole other can of worms, but I think there's like a mix of things in what you're saying. It's like on one end, um, stuff that was edgy before became institutionalized in a way.
mhm.
Uh, I was joking about this with Peter Clark about skateboarding. Like when I started skateboarding, if an old lady would see me with my board, they would like hold their purse
Yeah,
and like even maybe cross the street because like who's
they're
this?
dangerous.
This is yeah, he's a vandal. You know, he's probably doing drugs or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're like maybe he's robbing people. Who knows? Like none of us were doing that shit, but um, and then like the X Games came out, and even in their beginning, it was still like a little bit kind of like comparing this to camp, like sort of like unorganized and chaotic,
Yeah.
and you had like people getting into the half pipes, and then like a punk band just coming in and playing whatever. It's like it was like kind of like messy,
Yeah.
but like after 1 or 2 years of like the X Games run, it became so like professionally organized and like
Hmm.
regulated and all the things. And then like every kid had a skateboard. Like the new like Christmas gift was like a board, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you had these kids which were offered like either very shitty boards or like super expensive ones, like with like incredible gear, but they didn't know anything about it. They didn't even
Hmm.
ask for it. And so this to me like so you have that happens to those brands, I guess. And regarding what you were saying about work, and I think there's two things like the institute, like the you know what I was saying, but then also the fact that we are in a very complex situation worldwide now. I think from a political, economical standpoint, um, you know as good as me that like work isn't going well for a lot of creatives, and not only creatives, like for everybody, like restaurants, shops, brands,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Totally.
uh, it's being shitty for everybody. And so people were already not very like they were not willing to take a lot of risks. With this context, even less.
Even less. Yeah.
Like nobody wants to go bankrupt, nobody wants to be fired now, because how am I going to get a job? Like, you know, it's
Hmm.
and then you end up in this like soup where everything tastes the same. um but I always keep that lesson in mind that, you know, when the Great Depression happened in the United States, every brand, every product maker in the United States stopped advertising, because communication and advertisement is the first thing that gets cut
Mm-hmm.
when a crisis hits. The only brand that kept advertising and got in depth doing it was Kellogg's. And that was pivotal for them because everybody was quiet and they were the only ones saying like, hey, we're here doing stuff. And that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
gamble like paid out like hugely. So I think
Yeah.
um in times of when there's a crisis, there's also opportunity. And and I'm saying this for us as creatives, but also like
Hmm.
for brands that might maybe listen to us. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so if
Well,
like
and you know,
now is the time to stand out. Like now it's the time to be
exactly.
out
That's
there.
what I was going to say. Now is the time to double down on yourself or your, on who you are. And hopefully you know that. And that's okay if you don't. But like, and if you don't, maybe that's something to focus on. But like, yeah, it's, uh the work thing's been tough, like a lot of conversations, not a lot of like, green lights on things over the last few years. But from my perspective and what I'm seeing coming through my inbox and things now is things are opening back up. People are ready to spend. They've held a lot of money, but they're doing it way more like strategically and tactically in a way. And I think, um, from my perspective too, is that I am now starting to see a bit of the fruits of the not of the labor, but of staying true to who I am and staying positioned with my business in the outdoor industry, and like it's what I know and it's who I am, and like I'm not trying to be a software motion designer now, or like I'm not like chasing. I'm like kind of doubling down on who I am and what I do, and you know, and what I want to focus on. And by doing that, I'm actually busier than I have been the last 3 years. So it's like maybe, you know, that's a sign from the universe or whatever of like, okay, yep, you had to go through some mental gymnastics to get here right now, but by doubling down on yourself and like refocusing, like you're doing it at the time it was needed, you know. So I think a lot of this all kind of wraps back into the disconnect to connect, because it allows you, with the connecting of other people or other brands or whatever, to really connect with yourself and figure out a little bit more about yourself. And sometimes it's hard to do that by yourself. Sometimes you have to have these conversations. And especially if you can be in a space or have a platform where you can have some hard conversations with people that you've now grown to know and trust. Like, I think those are the things that are going to get us through a lot of this shitty time. And I don't know. I think we just can learn from each other almost better than anyone else, because, you know, we're going through the same shit. And I know at camp, Parvini was saying like he doesn't have a therapist. He has a lot of good friends because they can essentially understand what he's going through, you know, where a therapist doesn't really understand the crazy production grind or whatever, you know. But yeah, man, it's all about the connections and being true to who you are, or as close to who you are as possible. And I mean, I'm just a firm believer of that's how you're going to stand out from the crowd, because if you're just trying to be like everyone else, you're going to just fall into that big ass sea of everyone else. And that's okay. Sometimes I need to do that, right? And just coast for a bit or whatever. But like, I think in this day and age, and where the industry is and where work and clients and everything is, like, it's just time to double down on yourself and like go for it. And like, if you kind of look at it as like failure's not an option, that's heavy. But like, if you go into it with a mindset of like, all right, I'm going to be the best fucking trade show motion graphic designer on the planet or whatever, and like you just go hard, and that's, maybe you love going to trade shows, that's your thing, like then go into it, do that, you know. And it's like the same shit we talk about with like getting hired for stuff. Put stuff on your reel and on your portfolio that you want to do. So like
Yeah.
do it, you know, and do not just like the cool shiny sphere stuff. Do the stuff that in the service the industries that you love and that you pay attention to, because also through that you're carving your own little niche of an expertise there, right? Because like if you can talk to trade show booth designers about the next emerging technology and trade booths, they're going to be like, you know, Augustine, he's our guy, you know. And but it just, if you're paying attention to that industry already because you love it, and then you can do creative services on top of it, I think it makes you a little bit more um, um, useful, knowledgeable, and it kind of makes you stand out even more.
Small disclaimer: I'm not crazy about booth, but like the example was totally valid. So, um, you know, it's you mentioned hard conversations, and that's something that resonates with me a lot, because I'm already myself a mix of cultures. So I'm South American. I live in Europe. Um, I work with people from around the globe, and you know, like it's already sometimes it's hard to like, I'm not even talking here about hard conversations or like yet, just to understand each other. Like, you know, there's been like conversations where you and I were, and I was like, oh man, I thought that in French in my head. I tried to like translate that in English, and it came out really weird. Like, if you want to censor that out, like just be my guest. Like, and I think like starting from that, like starting point, starting from there, and then getting to hard conversations, is you need to be open to difference, um to
Totally.
different, like to the difference of the person in front of you. Like, they go through different things, they had a different life, they come maybe from a different culture. Like I'm still from like a Western sort of like culture, but imagine somebody in India, somebody in Japan, like some parts of South America. Like, sometimes I mean, we are and we are not miles away. We are miles away on the surface, but on the inner side, like, we want the same things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we have different ways of expressing it. So to be
Mm-hmm.
able to have those like hard conversations, you need to be open. You need to be able to accept difference and go like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
see it like that, but I didn't thought of that. Like, be open to that thing, and it says like, huh, okay, I don't particularly agree with it, but I understand it. Like, and that's where the
Yeah.
conversation begins, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have another question for you. We mentioned like hard times and stuff like that, and like you said in the beginning, and the world is taking a weird turn right now. Um, and we creatives are in a tough spot at the moment, also with the technology happening and
Yeah.
all the layoffs of like studios, like feeling for bankruptcy and stuff like that. Um, you and I are part of the first wave of motion designers, and we are now parents.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about the creative path for our kids? Is this something that you see as viable, or kind of like you wouldn't like encourage them because it's maybe like on a tight spot right now?
Like in terms of like would I steer my kids into motion graphics? Like
Yeah, I'm not saying you.
or if they showed an interest in it, like foster it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
I
more
mean,
like if they show an interest, like.
I would say 100% because I think we're only going to get more and more screens. There's only going to be more and more things that move. Yeah, there's AI and all that stuff, but you know what? The kids my kids aren't going to know what it was pre-AI. They're not of that age yet, you know. But I think just getting my kiddos excited about creativity and being creative, whether that's performing a play, drawing, being on a computer, making music, playing music, whatever it is, I just want them to find that outlet, you know. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that kind of drew me to just art, unintended. There you go. Was just like the excitement of creating something, you know? And when it comes to motion graphics, though, like I think who knows where things are going to be going, but I think there's a lot of room to run in our industry. I think you know there's the AI thing is always going to be kind of looming. It's not going to go anywhere, but I'm a firm believer of just using it for our superpowers and not feeling like it's going to take everything away from us. But you know, but honestly, I think a lot of um, the stuff I would tell them is like go do what you enjoy and what fills your bucket. And if motion graphics and making animations is that amazing, and like who knows what in 10 years things are going to look like, you know? Um, and so I think it is the open mind. It is like try not to just be stuck in your way. And similar to kind of what you were saying about like hard conversations, whatever. Like if you think you know how fucking everything in this world is, like you're an idiot, you know? Like you should be learning from everybody you come into contact with at some point, somehow, some way, whether it's culture or store, like whatever it is. Like you can always, like we're all remixes of every interaction and things that have inspired us. So like I would say that to them, just like keep an open mind, be excited to learn, be excited to try new things, don't be afraid to fail. You know, you learn way more stuff from failing than you do from landing it. Like if you're trying to kickflip on a skateboard, you're going to figure out where your feet need to be because you've done it 100 times and you fucking slam in, blah, blah, then you finally land it. But if you landed it first try, you wouldn't even know like how you did it. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to learn through that failure of like try. And so like don't let that get you down. Like that would be my biggest thing to them. And you know, I actually just kind of went through this with my oldest. Like he didn't make like the A team for soccer, right? He made the B team, quote unquote, whatever it is. And I was so nervous, but he took it in stride. He's like, yeah, no, that's fine. I still have some friends on that. And I'm like, oh my God. Phew. Like I thought he was gonna be like just destroy that he
Bravo.
like wasn't good enough or what, you know, but it's like no, he took it in stride and he's like, yeah, like that's cool. And so like, you know, not getting upset and frustrated when, you know, things don't go your way. It's easier said than done, obviously, for all of us. But like, I don't know. I think our whole life journey is like a one big long class, right? And we're always finding inspiration and learning. And um, I would say, you know, even in a creative career, like if I've flatlined and I'm just kind of like blah, then that is like the same way as like declining for me. Like I always have to be trying something new and learning and doing the next thing. And yeah, not everyone's wired like that, but I don't know. It to me, that's what makes it exciting. That's what makes this industry exciting is it's so, I mean, cutting edge is kind of a word to throw around with it because I mean, think about it. We're using AI. We're using real time stuff. Like we're so far ahead of like just general knowledge of technology and stuff, you know, than most people just due to our industry. It's exciting and it's always changing. And I think, you know, embracing that rather than being fearful of it is probably the best way to look at the future, not only for, um, you know, our mental health, but just as like what's around the next corner, you know? So,
Yeah, the reason I was asking you that question is also because, you know, with my wife, we had these conversations also how this is not only as a creative, but I think it's also like as a freelancer, you have ups and downs. And
mhm,
sometimes times can be very rough.
mhm.
And so her perspective came more from a like protecting mother saying like, yeah, I don't want my daughter to go through that sort of.
Yeah.
And my response was like, but you know, like there's no job out there that will guarantee you like no hardship path. Like you can be, I don't know, you can be a doctor and still like have ups and downs and like go through hard stuff. Like financial is not the only like variable in the equation. and
Mhm.
and and even like even if you are taking all the economic like variable, nothing can guarantee you that like your job tomorrow won't be shaken by something, by a
It's
crisis or by technology or whatever.
mhm,
It's to like I think we are in an era with a lot of that is unpredictable
mhm.
nowadays.
You got to be nimble. You got to be ready to shift. You got to be ready to learn. You got to be ready to try the next thing or whatever. And like that takes a fucking mental toll too. But like, yeah, I mean, if you're set in your ways, you're going to be left behind, you know, and like, um, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay, it's okay. You know, I was gonna say that um you know, when COVID happened, every I was doing a lot of live action at that time,
I remember.
and everything was shut down. And I had the chance that I also was doing motion design, and so I immediately said like I'm gonna pivot
Hmm.
and like start like doing full on motion design, because like anyway, this for now it's dead in the water. And at that period, like for all my friends that were like DOPs like that was very, very rough for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't pivot because they
Mm-hmm.
didn't had like, they couldn't like be shooting, like not being on, you had to be on site, you needed actors, you needed a set, whatever. Um, and like with what we do, like we don't need any of that. We can recreate all of that if we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so to start like landing the plane slowly but surely, talking about the future. So what's next? What's in your mind right now?
Well, for now, I'm kind of just enjoying hitting the like release valve for a bit. Just kind of decompressing, focusing more on client work and like my actual studio and that work because things have been picking up. But also, yeah, just focusing a little bit more on myself and I don't know what may happen in the future. I love communities. I love being part of communities, building them, all the things. And so like I could see myself maybe doing something again in the future, another event or whatever. But we'll see what happens. Um, I think just right now focusing on my business and being a dad and being a husband and kind of like, um, taking that time to really enjoy slowing down a bit and being conscious of that, right? Rather than, I mean, I think all of us are so guilty these days of just like blindly just always going, right? And like, just because that's what society is now, it's all inbound, bam, bam, more information. This is how breaking news, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, it's hard to just sit and quiet your mind, And so just trying to be a little bit more conscious of that shit. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like when the camp thing started, like I had one kid who was super young. Now I got two kids. I'm going to soccer practice all the time. Like, life is just different. Talk about pivoting, right? And so realigning priorities there, like I said before, everything was a priority. Therefore, the real priorities in life were equal to things that were not a priority in life. Um, and so, yeah, just focusing more on that and just trying to slow down and like enjoy doing what I'm doing, because I think a lot of times it's like head down onto the next thing and then this and then onto the next thing and that, it is kind of that grind, but just really trying to enjoy the process and going through my process of project, like just being more mindful of everything, and especially these days with like you had mentioned before too, like the political landscape, the geopolitical landscape, like fucking it's like I just want to go crawl in a hole, but like that's not an option. So it's like just trying to disconnect, and not pay attention as much. Like if shit hits the fan, sure, I'll know about it, but like I don't need to be keeping, a watchful eye on every thing left and right. And so I've really tried to like even just dip into Slacks and Discords and social media like once a day. And yeah, I don't know, just again, focus on myself. And it's so cliche and kind of redundant to say now, but it's true. And it's funny, like how so many people talk about it and you just never really get it or know until you fucking need it, and then you're like, whoa, okay, this is what everyone was talking about. Like
Well,
um
cliches are cliches for a reason.
yeah,
They don't
there
come
you
out
go.
from nowhere. And
Right.
like Eric Swarovski was saying something that was interesting regarding what you were just saying, is it's almost counterintuitive, but in a world that goes faster and faster, we have to learn again to go slower.
Mm-hmm.
It's like learn to like slow down to be able to process and be selective on what you process. Like don't process everything. Just process only what you need. And leave the rest outside, because the rest is just noise that's not going to bring you anything. So that being said, I would like to thank you for joining me today. It was a pleasure. Always good to see you.
Yeah,
And
same, man.
see you around, Mark.
Yes, sir. Will do. Thanks so much for having me on, and really enjoyed our chat, and looking forward to seeing all the other episodes as well.
You have a couple hours to go.
Yeah, hey, it's all good.
See you, man.
Thanks, buddy.